Hey everybody, this video I'm going to demonstrate the process of putting some sound deadening foam on this, in this case my brake cable or my hose there for my hydraulic brake on my pivot vault here. So basically, long story short, doing a gravel race a few months back, and everything had been quiet since then, but at some point I managed to get this hose to where if I move that back and forth, it'll definitely got some noise going on there. So the process is pretty simple. Basically what we're going to do is disconnect this hose, and I'm going to put some of this Jaguar insulation, or looks like pipe insulation, kind of thin version of that. It's probably the original, what it's designed for, but basically they sell it as cable deadening foam. So anyway, let's get this thing torn apart and we'll just get right into it. Alright, so tools I'm going to be using today, or items, other than the sound deadening foam there, is just a 2mm hex key, 8 and 10mm wrenches. I've got my little, we're going to cut the hydraulic brake hose. So when we reconnected, I've got a new SRAM, just barb and olive, and then the little wrench there threads in. I've got a sharp knife. I don't have any cable cutter or any hose cutters on hand, so we're just going to use a razor blade. And then I'll show you a little trick with just an old spoke and some diagonal cutters there. Yeah, other than that, just some spare electrical tape to tape the bars, and probably about 90% of the time I'll show you a method of cutting this hose and reconnecting it where we don't have to re-bleed the brakes. May have to re-bleed them, but if I do, I'll take that to the shop and do it tomorrow or the next day. But anyway, I'm going to show you a process that's about 90% effective of not having to re-bleed the brakes. So what I'm going to do first, just roll up the hood, and then that's the piece there where the little compression nut threads into. And hopefully we should be able to just reuse this tape here. Just cut it off here. I do have some other tape just in case this rips up, but I think it's going to be all right. But yeah, anyway, I saw this is, as far as these pivot bikes, it's the little covers where the cable goes into the frame, be it a shift cable or a hydraulic brake hose, they're all pretty much the same little plates. So I saw a review the other day of that new pivot switchblade, and the only complaint that the guy had on it was that it was basically the same thing we got going on here, where the cable slaps around inside the frame and makes noise. And he had thought a solution would be, some O-rings or something around the little plate cover. But still, if the hose works loose, or the brake cable or whatever. A lot of them are not necessarily hoses, but they're full runs of just brake or shift cable housing. All right, let's zoom in on this a little closer. All right, so we got our hose cut loose there and everything. So this piece here will actually pivot upwards. And so basically to disconnect, that's our main mount portion there, and a little safety arrow, do not disconnect from that portion. So these are pretty easy to disconnect, or if you need to put a new hose on it or whatever, switching bikes, whatever. So basically we've got our 10mm open end wrench there. We're going to put that on that end. And we got our 8 on the compression nut. So basically just like breaking loose a, you know, a lock nut in a cone or something. Just hold the lower 2 flats stationary and then just break the compression nut loose. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point, I want to keep this piece facing, kind of pointing upwards. So I'm going to put this little towel here under it just to keep that up, and then if any DOT fluid spills out there, I'll catch it there or whatnot. So yeah, let's get set up and we'll get this apart and cut it here. Right. So, and put some nitrile gloves on. Basically we're going to just undo that, we'll slide it back, and then kind of the goal is to pull this out without leaking really any fluid. So there's our old piece there. So we're going to just place it on a piece of wood here, and in this case I've got enough housing or enough hose to basically cut a little bit off here. There we go. Keep that up. Make sure the little compression nut just stays down. We can go ahead and just let that slide down for now. And what I like to do is just take an old spoke and basically if we just thread it. I found it's the same thread pitch basically as the little barb that threads in there. So anyway, we've got it in there, a few threads, and then I'm just going to cut a little excess off just to, whoa, just give us something to bite onto to get it out later. But this will keep the fluid from leaking down there. And so from here we're ready to get our hose put on. We can go ahead and take our nut off for now. We're going to need to take that off. Set that aside. And we'll move into getting that little plate off there. Okay, so before we take that little plate off, one thing I want to do, kind of get this ready, I want to basically put the foam from here until about as far as I can get it, maybe under the bottom bracket. I don't know if it'll go that far, but just by mocking it up here, I'm going to try to get about that much in there. So we've got this tube here that we're going to slip in there. Basically there's just a little 2 millimeter screw, a little small bolt. You want to be careful with these because they are easy to drop and roll away. So basically once we remove our little plate, it gives us plenty of room to fish that piece of cable deadening foam inside of there. So I'm just going to start here. You know, sometimes I'll put a little bit of like slick honey. Put a little slick honey on the housing just to kind of give that thing, will make it slide a little easier. It's a little tricky getting it past that piece of spoke. You know, and ideally if you're building a bike from scratch, this is something you can do as you're building the bike. Just goes so much easier. And I'm going to put a little bit on the outside of the foam as well. inside the frame there. Once we get it past the start point, it gets a lot easier. There we go. You kind of just work it, do a little push-pull. You can already hear that thing's quieter. It's not, it makes a dullish thud, but not a super loud clack. One way you can do it is to push the hose and everything in, and then pull out on the hose, just kind of back and forth. All right. Go ahead and put our little cover back on. Try not to drop the screw. All right, that doesn't need to be more than a couple Newton meters tight. All right, so we've got our everything cinched down. We're going to go ahead and pull this. Actually, one other little trick is just put you a little L bend on it, and you can just thread it right out from there. Go. Alright, so we're going to get take our compression nut. Don't forget about that. I'm going to slip that back over. And our little piece there. I think it's a T8. It's this wrench size. And we're just going to thread that all the way in. Again, I found that it is the same thread pitch as a spoke, so that kind of comes in handy. I'll use this little trick a lot of times. If they're long even, sometimes the factory pieces that come on the brakes are pre-bled and everything, but they have a piece that sticks, it's got a little loop where you can pull it through the frame, but sometimes those are even a little big, so I'll just use the spoke method and cut it off flush, knowing that I'm going to cut more off the cable. But if it's pre-bled, that keeps that cable from leaking fluid. DOT fluid everywhere. Okay, so these, there's an end that's threaded and then an end that's open. So we'll put the open end in, and then these threads are going to be reversed. So we're going to turn this counterclockwise and then just till it cinches down. And just get that in position, put it right in our little Steltima jig piece there. Try to keep this from flopping around. And you can see there's 8 Newton meters is what you want to shoot for. You know, at the shop we've got a little, one of the little adapters that you can put a torque wrench on. But you know, after you've done a few of these, you kind of, you get a pretty good feel of where it needs to go torque wise. It's pretty good there. And it feels pretty good. That's basically how it felt before. I'm going to need to put new brake pads and probably bleed it and everything else, just kind of annual service type thing, but yeah, I'm okay with that. So yeah, basically just a matter of rewrapping these bars. I'm going to clean this up with a little isopropyl, need that leftover slick honey residue. And then all that's left is just tape the hose down and retape the bars and we're good to go. Yes, that's definitely quieter as far as that goes. Yeah, so that's pretty simple little fix there to that hose rattling around inside the carbon frame. And so yeah, anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already a subscriber, and we'll see you guys next time.